It was last fall, right in the first week of October, when the air outside was just beginning to shift into that crisp chill that hints at the coming winter. The days were getting shorter, the evenings darker, and I remember how the sun had just barely dipped below the horizon when I pulled into my driveway that Monday after work. It was an ordinary day, completely unremarkable up until that point, which is why what happened next felt so jarring, like life had been proceeding smoothly until something suddenly snapped out of place. Normally, my after-work routine never changed. I would ease my car into the garage, grab my bag from the passenger seat, and enter my house from the side door connected to the kitchen. That day, though, something unusual caught my eye before I even parked. Hanging from the front door handle was a pale, rectangular shape that stood out against the dark wood. Curiosity tugged at me hard enough that, instead of going into the garage as usual, I pulled into the driveway and walked straight up to the door. What I found wasn't the usual coupon packet or local business flyer taped there. It was an envelope, plain white, sealed shut, and with my name written neatly across the front in blue ink. Not typed, not mass-printed, handwritten. That was the first thing that made my stomach clench. Whoever left this note not only knew my name but knew where I lived, and had chosen to deliver it by hand instead of something less personal. I stood there a moment, staring at it under the dim porch light, debating whether to take it inside or rip it up right then and there. Against my better judgment, I slipped a finger under the flap and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, folded into thirds. The writing was small, careful, and disturbingly direct. The letter said, in no uncertain terms, that the writer had been interested in me for some time, and wanted to meet me the following day at a specific place and time. The strangest part was how oddly convenient the suggestion was. It fell on one of my rare days off work. A coincidence maybe, but the fact that they knew me well enough to choose that day left me unsettled. What threw me even more was the lack of a signature. No name, no phone number, not even an initial. Just a vague demand for me to show up. I crumpled the letter in my hands, a sharp wave of unease rising in my chest. There was no way I was going to meet some stranger who thought taping letters to my door was a good idea. Still, the implications nagged at me. They knew who I was. They knew where I lived. And they were bold enough to walk up to my house, probably in broad daylight, to leave this note. I tore it to shreds in the kitchen and tossed it in the trash, telling myself that was the end of it. Maybe it was a prank, maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I couldn't shake the crawling feeling that someone, somewhere, had been watching me longer than I realized. That night, I tried to follow my normal routine. I ate dinner, watched some TV, and eventually climbed into bed just before 11. Sleep didn't come easy. I kept replaying the handwriting in my head, the strange tone of the words, the chill of knowing someone wanted me specifically. But eventually exhaustion dragged me under. The next morning was calm. I had no obligations, no work, nothing planned. I slept late, lounged around, made a lazy breakfast, and spent the afternoon drifting between chores, my phone, and the background hum of the television. By the time evening came, I realized I'd barely stepped outside all day. Around 8 or 9, I made myself a simple dinner and started winding down for the night. By 10, I decided on a long, hot shower before bed. The steam filled the bathroom, fogging up the mirror, and for a while, I managed to let the tension wash away. That was when the sound cut through, the sharp, unexpected chime of my doorbell. At first I froze, water rushing over me, ears straining. It was late, too late for deliveries, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I slid the shower curtain back just enough to listen. Silence, no knocking, no footsteps. After a minute I convinced myself whoever it was had already left. Still, unease prickled at the back of my neck. I tried to continue my shower, but the thought gnawed at me. The letter yesterday, the stranger wanting to meet, and now a doorbell at night. It was too coincidental. The longer I stood there, the more convinced I became that it wasn't random at all. Then I heard it. Not the doorbell this time, but a sound much closer. A faint creak, almost like a floorboard shifting just outside the curtain. My heart pounded. I shut off the water in an instant and yanked the curtain back. Nothing. Just the empty bathroom, dripping tile, and my own pale reflection staring back at me. I dressed quickly, pulse still hammering, and went straight downstairs. Through the peephole in my front door, I saw only darkness. No figure, no movement, nothing at all. But when I cracked the door open, a folded slip of paper fell silently to the welcome mat. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was the same as before. This time the note was angrier. The writer scolded me for not showing up to the meeting, insisting I'd ignored them. They wrote like we had an agreement, as if I had broken some unspoken promise. At the bottom, instead of anonymity, there were 2 initials, DN. I stood there clutching the letter, my skin cold and clammy. Whoever this was, they weren't just playing games. They had been to my house not once, but twice now. And worse, they seemed to genuinely believe I owed them something. I paced my living room for nearly half an hour, blinds shut tight, lights off, peering through cracks at the empty street outside. No cars, no figures, just the rustle of trees in the wind and the high-pitched whine of crickets. Yet the feeling of eyes on me wouldn't fade. It was suffocating. Eventually, I told myself I'd bring the note to the police in the morning. It was all I could do. For now, I needed to try and sleep. I headed upstairs, forcing myself to calm down. But just as I reached the top of the stairs, I heard it again, that low, deliberate creak. The same sound I'd heard in the bathroom, only now it was coming from inside my bedroom. I pushed the door open fast, expecting what? I didn't even know. But the room was empty, quiet, perfectly normal. I checked every corner, under the bed, the closet, behind the door. Nothing. I told myself it had to be the house settling, or my nerves playing tricks. Still, I locked the bedroom door behind me. Just as I was about to climb into bed, I remembered the one place I hadn't checked. The balcony. My master bedroom had a small one, but I almost never used it. The blinds were always closed. I walked over and slid the blinds aside just enough to see the door handle. My stomach dropped. It was unlocked. Before I could even reach for it, a shadow shifted in the corner of the balcony. My eyes snapped to it, and froze. A man was standing there. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face half hidden in the dark, but his eyes were locked on me. He didn't flinch when I saw him. He just stood there, then moved slowly across the balcony like he was circling. I bolted. I didn't think, didn't look back. I tore out of the bedroom, down the stairs and out the front door barefoot, sprinting to the nearest neighbor's house. Behind me, I heard the faint squeak of the balcony door sliding open. The police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched every inch of my house, but he was gone, vanished into the night. Later, piecing together the timeline with the officers, the most chilling realization struck me. The creaks I'd heard during my shower weren't in my imagination. He had already been inside. He'd likely slipped in through the balcony while I was distracted, hiding in my house as I walked from room to room, completely unaware. The thought that he might have been standing silently just feet away while I paced in my living room makes my skin crawl even now. And the worst part? When I caught that fleeting glimpse of his face, there was something unsettlingly familiar about him. Not someone I knew well, just familiar. Like a man I'd passed at the grocery store, or maybe in line at the post office. A stranger I wouldn't have thought twice about, except now I couldn't forget him. It's been nearly a year. No more letters, no more doorbells at night. Nothing. But I can't let it go. Every creak in my house makes me stiffen. Every set of footsteps behind me in a store makes me look twice. Because somewhere out there, Deanne is still watching, still waiting, and maybe, just maybe, still angry. The drive from Los Angeles back to the East Coast was supposed to be simple, long, exhausting, but straightforward. I had stayed in California a little longer than planned after a friend's wedding, catching up with people I hadn't seen in years. By the time I finally left, the delay meant I only had 4 days to cover the entire trip before I had to clock in for work. That left no time for detours, sightseeing, or even proper rest. I had to push my body and my car harder than I should have, running mostly on caffeine and stubborn willpower. By the time the clock edged past 1 in the morning, I was deep into nowhere. The highway stretched ahead in endless black ribbons. The occasional road sign flickered past, but otherwise there was nothing. No towns glowing on the horizon, no neon lights, not even a gas station for miles. Just trees, fields, and the suffocating darkness of rural America. My eyes ached so badly it felt like lead weights were tied to my lids. I kept blinking, shaking my head, rolling down the window for cool air. The lukewarm coffee I had picked up at some gas station 3 hours back had long since lost its edge. For stretches at a time, the road felt like it belonged only to me. An empty highway, dead silent except for the hum of my tires and the occasional roar of a semi-truck that blasted by and disappeared within seconds. Each time headlights appeared in my mirror, they were gone as quickly as they came. That was why I noticed this car. Its headlights glowed faintly in the distance behind me, dimmer than the others, almost hesitant. Unlike the newer cars with their sharp blue LED glare, this one had the dull yellowish glow of something older. It took a long time for those lights to catch up, as if the driver wasn't in any hurry. When they finally drew near, I expected them to slide past me the way everyone else did. Instead, the car hung behind me for a full minute before drifting slowly into the other lane. I kept steady in mind, giving them plenty of room. But then they didn't pass. I glanced left. An old, dusty, dark red car was pacing me perfectly. Its window was rolled down despite the cold night air. The man inside was staring directly at me, not just a passing glance. He had his head tilted slightly, eyes locked, expression fixed in a way that made my skin crawl. The inside light of his car was on, which made no sense for someone driving at night, but it illuminated him clearly. His face was drawn, his eyes bloodshot, his expression slack yet focused. He looked drunk, maybe high, maybe both, but more than that, he looked deliberate. He wanted me to see him. I kept my window rolled up and my eyes forward, pretending not to notice, but his stare burned through me like heat. My hands tightened on the wheel. I slowed down a little, hoping he would just move along. He slowed with me. I braked harder, dropping absurdly low for a highway, 25 miles per hour in the middle of nowhere. At last, he broke off, holding steady while I crawled behind. Relief surged as his taillights dwindled and vanished. I told myself he was just a drunk driver being stupid. Nothing more, just keep driving. Minutes later, my exhaustion returned, heavier than before. My body begged for caffeine or rest. When a small rest stop appeared, I took the exit. The place was barely lit, just a small concrete building with restrooms and a coffee vending machine humming outside. Not a single car in the lot. I parked, stretched my aching legs, and walked to the machine. The coffee it dispensed was cheap and bitter, but at that hour it felt like salvation. I clutched the paper cup, letting the heat soak into my fingers, and started back toward my car. That's when headlights swept across the lot. A vehicle pulled in slowly. My stomach flipped before my brain even caught up. It was the same red car. I froze beside my car door, coffee trembling in my hand. How? I hadn't passed him. He had driven off ahead of me. The only way he could be pulling in behind me now was if he'd somehow left the highway to wait, hidden in the dark, waiting for me to pass. That realization sent a chill down my spine. I climbed into my car and locked the doors immediately. He didn't park in another space. He pulled up right beside me, same as before, lining our cars door to door. I didn't have to look, but I did. And there he was again, turned toward me, those same raw, bloodshot eyes drilling into me. My engine roared to life as panic rose in my throat. That was when he moved. He leaned over, yanked open his passenger door, and gestured. He was motioning for me to get in. His expression twisted into something grotesque, a wide, forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. His mouth moved. He was shouting something, though I couldn't hear it through my glass. For a split second, his expression looked almost friendly. And then, when I didn't move, the smile collapsed into a dead, chilling stare. I slammed the gear shift and pulled out, heart hammering. His headlights flared behind me as he followed. Back on the highway, it started again. He swung into the other lane, pacing me, sometimes veering dangerously close. Once, twice, I swore he tried to clip my rear bumper. My hands were slick with sweat as I jerked the wheel to avoid him. He wasn't just following now, he was hunting. Adrenaline cut through my exhaustion. I scanned the road ahead desperately until I spotted it. One of those emergency U-turn lanes for police and maintenance crews. Without giving myself time to second guess, I swerved onto it in a single violent motion. My tires screamed against the pavement as I cut across the divider and onto the opposite side of the highway. In my mirror, his brake lights flickered. For a terrifying second, I thought he would follow. Then he didn't. His car lingered, then shrank into the distance, heading the opposite way. Only then did my body realize what it had been through. My hands shook uncontrollably on the wheel. My chest felt like it was collapsing. I drove until I found a real gas station, where I sat in the lot for nearly an hour, sipping water, trying to calm down. I filed a police tip online before I left. I reported him as a drunk driver, dangerously erratic, but not much came of it. I thought that was the end of it. 4 days later, safe at home, I looked up local reports out of curiosity. I wanted to see if anyone had been caught driving a rusty red car, maybe even get the satisfaction of a mugshot. What I found turned my stomach to ice. A disappearance had been reported on that very stretch of road. A traveler's car was found abandoned in the grass. The driver was gone, vanished. The only clue came from a witness who reported seeing a red car circling them earlier that night. My heart stopped as I read. It was identical to what I had experienced, except for one crucial difference. They hadn't gotten away. To this day, I don't know who that man was or what he wanted, but I know this much. If I hadn't taken that U-turn, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, I might never have made it home. This past winter, I decided to escape my usual routine and booked a remote cabin tucked away in the northeast part of Washington state. It was the kind of place people rented to fully embrace the cold season, a winter cabin, insulated, cozy, and meant for watching the snowfall from the safety of a fireplace, unlike the three-season cabins that were mostly closed during harsh weather. I imagined quiet evenings with the sound of logs crackling, mornings where the mountains wore fresh layers of snow, and afternoons spent doing nothing but staring out at the silent woods. When I first arrived, though, the landscape looked strangely bare. The skies were gray, the mountains sharp and brown, and the ground was dry, not yet blanketed by the powdery snow I expected. But when I woke up the next morning, the entire world outside had changed. Thick flakes were falling steadily, covering everything with a white sheet. By the time I made coffee and settled by the fire, it had already piled high enough that stepping outside felt pointless. The view was breathtaking, and I didn't mind being trapped inside with nothing but the fire, the creak of wooden beams, and the wind scratching against the windows. By 9 that night, exhaustion hit me. Maybe it was the heavy warmth of the fireplace, maybe just the silence, but my body begged for sleep. Before heading to bed, I remembered I had left a small duffel bag in the back seat of my car. I figured I'd better get it before the snow buried the car completely. I threw on boots and a jacket, braced myself against the cold, and opened the door. That's when I froze. The porch wasn't smooth anymore. The pristine layer of snow had been broken. Someone, or something, had been there. The powder was pressed down, shuffled, disturbed. At first I thought maybe it was an animal, but when I stepped out farther I saw the unmistakable pattern. Boots. Human footprints. They led up onto the porch and stretched back toward the woods. The trail vanished into the dark tree line, disappearing among the falling flakes. A chill deeper than the cold ran through me. How long ago had this been? Why hadn't I heard anything? Whoever it was hadn't knocked, hadn't spoken, hadn't even left a message with the cabin rental company. I tried to reason with myself, maybe a groundskeeper, maybe someone checking the place. My heartbeat slowed a little. I grabbed my bag from the car, hurried back inside and bolted the door. Within minutes I was under the blankets, telling myself not to overthink. The next 2 days blurred together. Snow fell endlessly, and I barely left the fire except to heat food or glance out the window. But there was one thing I couldn't ignore. Every so often when I checked the porch, new footprints appeared, always the same pattern. Always leading up to the cabin, always returning in the same direction, toward the woods. Whoever it was, they never knocked, never revealed themselves, never explained why they kept coming back. By the 3rd day, my nerves were raw. Curiosity clawed at me. So I bundled up, zipped my jacket tight, and followed the direction where the prints disappeared. The forest looked endless, each tree wrapped in snow, every shadow blending into the next. By then, last night's snowfall had erased most of the trail, so I was walking blind, guided only by memory. After a few minutes, everything looked the same. White, empty, disorienting. My own tracks behind me were already fading. A thought hit me sharp. One wrong turn and I'd vanish out here too. I turned back. The cabin, though plain and small, had never looked more welcoming. Inside, I thawed my fingers by the fire and listened to the logs hiss. Oddly enough, after that little venture into the woods, the footprints stopped. No more disturbances on the porch, no more quiet reminders that someone was watching. For the first time since I'd arrived, I relaxed. Maybe whoever it was had grown bored. Maybe they moved on. That night, the snow kept falling. The woods grew darker, and the world outside turned silent. The only sounds were the fire snapping and the wind brushing against the cabin walls. I stayed up later than usual, reading until midnight before finally collapsing into bed. Sleep came quickly. Sometime deep in the night, 3 a.m., maybe, I woke to a sound. At first I thought it was just the storm. The cabin groaned, the wind howled, the snow shifted, but then I heard it again. Crunch, a pause, another crunch. Footsteps. They were deliberate, slow, impossibly careful, almost as if the person wanted to blend into the natural noises of the night. The only reason I recognized them at all was because I already knew about the footprints outside. My body stiffened, my ears strained. Whoever it was circled the cabin, their steps moving toward the back wall, the side with the fireplace. Minutes passed. Silence returned. I should have stayed in bed, should have ignored it, but something stubborn in me refused. I swung my legs out of bed, heart hammering but oddly steady with adrenaline. I thought I could handle it. Arrogant, in hindsight. The hallway was a tunnel of darkness. No lights, no glow, just an endless black stretch leading to the living room. I crept forward, each step betraying me with tiny creaks, my breath fogged in the cold air. Halfway down, a sudden dread hit me, stronger than anything before. I knew something was wrong. This wasn't just someone walking outside. At the far end, just as I turned toward the front door, it happened. A loud, heavy thump shook the floor behind me. I spun around. For the briefest second, I saw movement, something human-shaped, darting through the shadows of the hallway I had just walked down. It was fast, too fast. My body acted before my mind caught up. I lunged for the door, snatched the keys I had left on the table, and ripped it open. The cold slapped me as I bolted into the snow, barefoot, lungs burning. I crashed into the car, fumbled with frozen fingers, and locked the doors. But terror set in when I realized the windshield was covered, thick with snow. I couldn't see a thing. Was he standing in front of the car, waiting? My pulse thundered. Only the rear windshield was clear, a small slit of visibility. That was enough. I threw the car in reverse and tore backward down the gravel drive, the tires skidding, the world blurring. The cabin shrank behind me, swallowed by the storm. By the time the police arrived, an hour later, the place was silent again. No prints, no trace, no sign of who had been there. The snow had swallowed every clue. The only thing they could figure was that the man had slipped inside through a window near the fireplace. From there, he crept down the hall, searching for me. He must have chosen the wrong bedroom first. Had he gone to mine, I would have been cornered, face to face, with nowhere to run. It was pure luck, seconds of timing, that saved me. And that thought still chills me more than the night itself. How close I came, how easily it could have ended differently.